Welcome back to the deep dive. If you're someone who grew up hearing that the key to career success was just putting in the hours, grinding harder,
Yeah.
then this deep dive is definitely for you. I know I certainly spent years believing that sheer effort was like the main currency. But like a lot of people, I eventually hit this wall. You realize the payoff for all that intense work, it just doesn't always show up. And then you see other people maybe not working those crazy hours suddenly just zoom past you. It's frustrating. Feels kind of unfair, actually.
Oh, completely. And that frustration, it's totally justified because the whole game, the underlying equation for success,
Yeah.
it changed. It changed while lots of us were still doing the old math.
Right.
Raw effort alone isn't the big differentiator anymore. And you have to ask why. Well, look around. We've got huge shifts, automation, AI everywhere. The job market is incredibly competitive globally. Think about it. Tasks that used to take hours of human effort. Now software, machine learning handles them, often better, faster.
So if you're just focused on working harder at those kinds of tasks,
You're basically competing with algorithms, which is not a winning strategy long term. The people really succeeding today, they get that hard work is table stakes. It has to be combined with smart strategy.
and that's really the heart of what our sources are saying today, isn't it? It's not about abandoning hard work. It's about directing it smarter. So our mission today is to unpack this new playbook. We want to look at the 8 specific strategies that seem to define modern success, the ones that combine effort with effectiveness. Okay, let's dive in. The first couple of strategies are about building foundations, starting with number 1, strategic relationships, not just, collecting contacts.
Yes, this is so important. We often confuse networking, going to events, grabbing cards with actually building relationships. The sources are really clear on this. Strategic relationship building isn't about how many people you know. It's about the quality, the intention behind it.
I definitely did the collecting cards thing, went to tons of events, thought I was networking. But like the sources say, it was just hoarding paper, really. So what does a strategic relationship look like in practice? How do you build that?
Well, it starts with value. Specifically, finding ways to genuinely add value to other people's work or lives first, without immediately thinking, what's in it for me? Successful people tend to identify others whose work they really admire. Not just people in high positions, but people doing interesting things. And then they focus on building an authentic connection over time. They're looking for insights, different perspectives, ways they can maybe collaborate or grow together. These relationships, the real ones, they become the bridges for referrals, for advice when you're stuck, for opportunities you'd never even hear about otherwise. Your standard contact list just can't do that.
That makes sense, but it sounds like, well, a lot more work than just showing up for drinks. Requires real, ongoing effort.
It absolutely does,
Right.
which is probably why it works so well, honestly. It acts as a kind of filter. And that connects perfectly to strategy number 2, developing rare, high-value skills. You see so many really dedicated people get stuck because they're busy perfecting skills that are frankly becoming commoditized.
Okay, let's pause there. What exactly do you mean by a commoditized skill?
Good question. So a commoditized skill is one that's become really common, easy to replicate, maybe easy to automate or outsource cheaply. Think about things like basic data entry, maybe simple transcription, routine calculations, stuff like that.
Right.
When a skill gets commoditized, your only way to compete is usually on price or speed. And that's just a race to the bottom, isn't it?
So the successful people are deliberately steering clear of that race. They're focusing on skills for the future economy.
Precisely. They're building expertise where human abilities are still irreplaceable. Things like judgment, creativity, complex problem solving. So the question you, listening, need to ask yourself is, am I working really hard, but am I working hard on the right skills, the ones that will actually matter in 5-10 years?
The sources highlighted 3 specific examples of these high-value skills. Number 1 was analyzing complex data, but then, crucially, being able to tell a compelling story with that data, making it actionable.
Exactly. Data storytelling is huge. An AI might crunch the numbers, but it takes a human to weave that into a narrative that actually persuades someone to make a strategic move. Then number 2 was mastering clear communication, especially now, right? In this world overflowing with information, just being able to cut through the noise is a superpower.
And the third one, which I find really interesting because it's so deeply human, is developing emotional intelligence, EQ. Using that to navigate tricky team dynamics, lead effectively, build trust.
Right. These kinds of skills.
Yeah.
They're very resistant to automation. They make you indispensable in a way that just technical proficiency often doesn't anymore.
Okay, so you've laid the groundwork, you've got the right relationships, the right skills, but that's not enough, is it? The next step is amplifying your impact. Because you can be brilliant, but if no one sees or understands your work, it's lost potential. Which brings us to strategy 3. Communicate with clarity and persuasion.
Yeah, this is where that rookie mistake, as one source called it, comes in. Thinking your great work will just speak for itself.
It really doesn't, does it?
No, sadly it doesn't. The hard truth is your brilliant idea. It's only as good as your ability to communicate it in a way that actually gets people to do something, to take action.
And we're not just talking about formal presentations here, right? This is everyday stuff too. Emails, meetings.
Oh, absolutely. It's about taking complex ideas and making them simple, compelling. It's about knowing your audience. How do you frame this for your team, who need the how, versus your boss, who needs the why and the bottom line? People sometimes think this is just about charisma, like you're born with it. But it's not. It's a skill. It's about structure, understanding motivation, delivering with confidence. Totally learnable.
That clarity really sets the stage for strategy 4. Leveraging systems and automation. This is where you stop just being busy and start being truly effective.
Yes, the really successful people, they're not necessarily working more hours. They're fiercely protective of their time and their mental energy. They create systems. They automate. They build things that do the heavy lifting for them.
Can we unpack that a bit? The sources mention cognitive load and force multipliers. What do those mean in this context?
Sure. So cognitive load is just the amount of brain power, the working memory you need for a task. Successful people actively try to reduce that load for recurring stuff. A force multiplier is anything, a tool, a process, a checklist, a template that lets a small amount of your effort create a much bigger result. It multiplies your impact.
Okay.
So instead of typing out similar answers to client questions over and over, they create, say, email templates that handle 80–90% of common queries automatically. Or they use project management software not just to list tasks, but to automatically assign the next step when one task is done, things like that.
That entrepreneur example in the source was great. Setting up workflows that automated, 80% of client onboarding? That frees up massive amounts of time.
Huge amounts. Time they can then spend on strategy, on high-value work, not on repetitive admin.
Yeah, I know. I waste time just trying to remember where I was on projects sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. That's the time they reclaim. The key mindset shift here is constantly asking, how can I make sure this task gets done reliably without me having to actively think about it every single time? It's about building infrastructure for your work so it scales.
That's a powerful distinction. Building assets, not just doing tasks.
Yeah.
Okay, let's shift gears into the third segment. This is about the mindset shifts, the internal changes. Strategy 5 is a big one. It may be tough for some. Positioning yourself as a problem solver, not just a task doer. We all know people who are super reliable, but they kind of get stuck being the human to-do list.
That is such a common trap. And the people who break out of it, the ones who accelerate, they're the ones who get good at identifying and solving the problems that really matter to the business, often before anyone even asks them to. They're consistently thinking, one level up from their actual job title.
So what does that look like day to day?
Well, it means they don't just take an assignment and execute it. They ask why. What's the goal behind this? Is there a better way? In meetings, they're not just waiting for action items. They might come in saying, hey, I noticed this bottleneck in process X, and here's an idea for how we could remove it. Or I saw an opportunity over here that we're not currently tapping into. They make problems disappear. They don't wait for problems to be handed to them.
That takes a lot of initiative.
Yeah.
Curiosity, too, and self-direction. And then, okay, once you're solving these important problems, strategy 6 says you need to invest in your personal brand and visibility. Now, I know that phrase makes people cringe. Shameless self-promotion, right?
It totally does trigger that reaction. But we need to separate authentic visibility from just bragging. Because the reality is, talent without visibility, it's just hidden potential. It doesn't help you or the organization nearly as much as it could. If you solve a huge problem but only your immediate boss knows, when it comes time for a promotion or a high-profile project, are you going to be top of mind for the senior leaders? Probably not.
Okay, but how do you do it without feeling a little sleazy? Where's the line? You can't spend all day on LinkedIn and no time actually doing the work.
No, absolutely not. It's about strategic sharing, not constant noise. It means maybe writing a thoughtful post about a lesson learned on a project. Maybe offering to present findings at a team meeting or even an industry event if appropriate. Sometimes it's just making sure you speak up thoughtfully in important meetings. It's about ensuring your contributions and your perspective are known beyond your immediate circle. The point is, opportunities tend to flow to people who come to mind first. Successful people understand this and strategically make sure they do come to mind for the right reasons.
That makes sense. It's about creating your own luck, in a way. Which leads nicely into strategy 7, crucial in today's world. Adapting quickly to change, not resisting it.
Yes, this is huge. When change happens, a new system, a market shift, whatever, you see two reactions. Most people complain. They talk about how things used to be better, the high achievers. They're immediately figuring out, okay, this is the new reality. How do I win here? They see change as an opportunity, not just a hassle.
There was that interesting quote in the source from Ruda Yende. Reality is more flexible than you think. Your beliefs literally shape what you experience. Changing beliefs changes your world. How does that connect to adapting at work?
It's fundamental. If your underlying belief is, say, ooh, this new software is going to be a disaster, you'll approach it defensively. You'll look for problems. You'll resist. But if you shift your belief to something like, okay, how can this new tool make me more effective? Or what new possibilities does this open up? Suddenly you're approaching it with curiosity. You're looking for the upside. So practically, these adaptable people, they're the first ones figuring out the new software. They're experimenting with how to lead remote teams well. They treat uncertainty almost like a competitive advantage. If they can figure it out faster than others, they gain an edge.
That mindset shift is key. Okay, that brings us to the final strategy, number 8. And this one feels almost counterintuitive, but maybe the most liberating. Prioritize learning from failure over avoiding it.
This might be the single biggest differentiator. When you look at really high achievers, guess what? They've usually failed way more often than the average person.
Really?
Yeah.
More often?
Yeah. Their success rarely comes out of nowhere. It looks sudden, but it's usually built on a foundation of smart attempts, learning quickly from what didn't work, and iterating fast.
So the difference isn't that they don't make mistakes, it's how they react to them.
Exactly. Most people get derailed by failure. They see it as a personal failing, maybe get embarrassed, avoid risky things in the future. These successful individuals, though, they have this incredible frame for it. They see failure as, quote, expensive education that their competitors are too scared to pay for. It's literally an investment in future success.
Wow, expensive education. I like that. So how do they process it? Is it just a mindset thing or is there a method?
Well, there's definitely a method. It's not about dwelling on the negative emotion. It's about immediate extraction. Okay. What did we think would happen? What actually happened? Why the difference? What specific concrete lessons can we pull from this? And crucially, how do we apply those lessons to the very next attempt? They often use a kind of formal debrief, even if it's just for themselves, to make sure they monetize every single failure into future insights. That's why their later successes can seem almost effortless. They paid the tuition earlier. So if we tie this all together, this new playbook, it says hard work is absolutely necessary. It's the foundation. But it's not enough anymore. Success today demands combining that effort with smart strategy, with intentionally cultivated relationships, with developing those rare, valuable skills, and with a mindset that embraces change and, yes, even learns aggressively from failure.
That's a really powerful summary. And, if you're listening and thinking, wow, 8 strategies, that's overwhelming, please don't feel like you have to overhaul everything overnight. Maybe the best first step is just internalizing this core idea. Effort needs direction. Then just pick one. Pick 1 or 2 of these strategies that really resonate with where you are right now. Maybe it's focusing on identifying one key problem you can solve for your team this month. Or maybe it's committing to developing one specific high-value skill over the next quarter. The old rules might be fading, but that actually creates incredible opportunity for anyone willing to learn and play by these new ones.
Absolutely. And just reflecting on that final point about failure being extensive education. Maybe here's a final thought, a challenge for you to take into the week. If real success often comes from leveraging what you learn from mistakes, what's one deliberate, relatively low-stakes situation you could put yourself in this week? Maybe volunteering for a small, unfamiliar task, pitching a slightly risky idea, something where failure is a real possibility, but you go into it knowing that the learning you'll gain that expensive education will actually be far more valuable in the long run than any minor setback. That's how you start making those investments immediately.
A great challenge to end on. Thanks for diving deep with us today. We'll catch you next time on The Deep Dive.